Hey everyone, Warwick's here. So we're back with another Hero Tree Talent First Impression video. This one is going to be for Rider of the Apocalypse, which is the tree for Frost and Unholy Death Knights. Now originally I wasn't going to do a video on this spec because I just would have wanted to focus on kind of the main classes that I play, which is Monk, Druid, and Hunter. But I've been playing, kind of took a look at these trees. Death Knight is a class that I've always loved. I love the lore of the DK. Arthas is my favorite character in WoW lore history. Obviously, I have a giant panorama which I'll get put up and I'll take a photo of and throw it up on my socials or whatever in the community posts here on YouTube. It shows just how much I love that man. I would love to have a replica Frostborn in my life one day, or a replica Lich King helmet one day. Blizzard, if you're watching, you want to send me a free gift, I'm not going to complain. DM me and I'll tell you my address. Anyways, but this is one that I think a lot of people have been looking forward to if you're either a Death Knight player or if you just wanted to see what the heck they meant by Rider of the Apocalypse, which is a banger name, by the way. So whoever made this name, kudos to you. So this is the tree for Frost and Unholy Death Knights. So my background is that I played a lot of DPS DK off and on over the last couple of expansions. I really enjoy Frost DK. It's my one of my favorite specs. Like, it's, you know, when you think about melee, it's, you know, Windwalker, Feral, Survival, and then probably DPS DKs, and in some form or fashion. And I've always enjoyed like Arms and Fury as well. Like, I like most of the melee specs, basically, if you're, unless it's Rogue, which I don't enjoy the Rogue specs. Enhanced Shaman, love-hate relationship with, but for the most part, like almost every other melee spec, I find myself enjoying some aspects of them, because I love melee DPS. Let's just be real about it. I love melee. So this is a tree that I'm really looking forward to looking over. Unholy Death Knight, I've always kind of liked. There are certain builds of Unholy Death Knight that I really enjoy, and then certain ones that I really don't enjoy. So when those I have to play, I kind of bounce off Unholy and go back to Frost and just play it instead, because I don't hate Breath of Sindragosa, even though I know there's some aspects to it that are extremely punishing for no reason, and it's kind of gotten out of control with what you do with it. And obliteration builds, like, I don't hate them. They're kind of one note, and as someone that prefers dual wield aesthetics to two-hander aesthetics, it kind of feels bad right now because dual wield obliteration is a giant freaking meme. In terms of viability as a build, I hucked around with it with my guildmates and keys and stuff. They don't really care because they know we're going to time the key, because we're all good enough to do a certain level at certain eye levels, no issues. So I would like to see dual wield obliteration builds or like a dual wield frost scythe build return one day, but we'll have to see what happens on it. So I'm looking at this, going to focus, I would say my perspective on this is going to be mostly thinking about Frost DK first, but obviously I'll take a look at and try to think about it from an Unholy perspective as well and give feedback on this. If you haven't seen one of these videos, what I do basically is I've kind of seen this. I've seen some positive reaction to this. So I wanted to do a video on it. I haven't really done a ton of research on this, mainly because I've just been super busy for the 4 days. As I record this, it's Sunday, St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day to all those that celebrate, by the way, even though this is going to come out like on the 22nd or something like that. It's going to be end of the week. And so I've not had a ton of time to really dive in and get a lot of the information out of this because I've been busy with being a dad, and I got set up with a project at work that's going to really occupy like 99% of my work time for the next 2 months, if not longer. So it's going to be very busy, and I won't have time to, like, outside of like lunch, to sit down and actually do research on any of this. So this is coming from like a initial impressions with no research, no information whatsoever. I'm looking at this and reacting accordingly. All right, so let's talk about this here. Let's start with Rider's Champion. It's the top rune. Spending runes has a chance to call forth the aid of a horseman for 10 seconds. So we're getting our new 4 horsemen of Mograine, Whitemane, Trollbane, and Nazgrim. Mograine casts Death and Decay at his location that follows his position. Can we get that to players? Now, I do know, because I saw a quick blue post, that Blizzard is looking into Death and Decay, and Cleaving Strikes in particular. So I know that they're doing something with that for War Within, so I'm going to withhold anything with Death and Decay, but having Mograine's ability on the Death Knight would be great. White Mane, cast Undeath on your target, dealing Shadow Frost damage per stack every 3 seconds for 24 seconds. Each time Undeath deals damage, it gains a stack, and it cannot be refreshed. So, how high can you get the stacks? Is there a cap on this? Well, for the 24 seconds that she's out. Or is it just something where it's like, she procs during hero, you're going to town. She procs outside of all your cooldowns and shit, you might feel a little bit bad. Interesting. Trollbane, cast Chains of Ice on your target, slowing their movement speed by 70%, increases the damage they take from you by 5% for 8 seconds. The Chains of Ice aspect is whatever. It could potentially be trolly in a Sanguine world. But, I mean, you can just grip them out if they're a grippable mob. The big thing for PvE purposes is going to be the increased damage. Only for 8 seconds, even though they last 10 seconds. Like, some of this is weird. And then Nazgrim, while Nazgrim is active, you gain Apocalyptic Conquest, increasing your strength by 5%. Good. Just good. That is good. Alright, let's start on the left side here. On a Paler Horse. So there's a passive for DK called On a Pale Horse that makes you... gives you 10% movement speed while mounted, I think. So instead of like a 315, it was 325, for example. And I don't know if that affects dragon riding, actually. Someone knows. Let me know. I'm curious. It's just something I thought of. While outdoors, you're able to mount your Acarus Death Charger in combat. Cool. Does it have to mount cast time? Because if so, I'm losing like 3 GCDs to be able to get a little bit of extra movement. And the outdoors thing really limits it. So like in a place like Nokid, for example, which we're going to get back in Season 4 most likely, is great because the whole engine's outside because you can dragon ride. And somewhere like, Neltharis, where there's no mounting, this is useless. In which case you take Death Charge, which replaces Death's Advance, and basically it's Paladin Charger, except it's 10 seconds long, which is a ridiculously long time. And you cannot be slowed and immune to forced movement effects and knockback, so like you can really gameplay this a little bit. So think of something like Razageth knockback, for example. You just Death Charger this, which you Death Advance it now and don't get knocked back. You think of the third boss in Rise, which has the Tornado in P2. You think of Dressarion, who has his knockback. Like, you're going to ignore all of those. So Death Charge, I think, is really cool. Divine Steed for DK is like cool, and if you remember the 4 Horsemen fight from Naxxramas, they were on their mounts the whole time, so it really plays into that theme and flavor. I like it. Really like it. I'm probably taking Death Charge the whole time. White Mane's Famine. When your diseases deal damage to an enemy affected by Undeath, it gains another stack. Additionally, when Undeath deals damage, it affects another nearby enemy. So this is a good way to basically have Undeath spread to as many targets as possible. And when you have Virulent Plague or Frost Fever going, you're going to get constant stacks ticking up on this, which means you're going to be doing even more Shadow Frost damage. So it's just a nice little damage amp that's pretty passive, but does so on a RNG proc with White Mane, and also has both single target and AoE benefit. So pretty good one. Hungering Thirst. The damage of your diseases, Frost Strike, and Death Coil increased by 15%. This is not a big DPS increase. One thing I noticed is that it doesn't include Breath of Sindragosa in this, which kind of feels bad, I think. And it doesn't include Epidemic either. I would probably want them to change this to the damage of your diseases and runic power spenders is increased by 15%, because then it makes it a little bit more universal to your build. And it maybe work that way, and this is just terrible tooltip. It's also possible, but I would really like to just have this affect all RP spenders. Anything that busts Breath of Sindragosa is going to be interesting though, so we'll have to. It's like a nice edge ability to tune. But I think they just need to make this RP spenders instead of specifically Frost Strike Death Coil. Mograin's Might. Your damage is increased by 5%, and you gain the benefits of your Death and Decay while inside Mograin's Death and Decay. So there's things like Cleaving Strikes, the extra 5% haste. Does it do the slow, the 90% that decays every second down to 10% slow? Does things like that. That's pretty solid. So we're kind of seeing our benefit from Whitemane. Now we're seeing our benefit from Mograine. Like, I think there's going to be something that specifically targets every single one of these. And so far, the 2 that they've hit have been pretty good. 5% increased damage. And if you can avoid having to cast your own Death and Decay by standing in Mograines, that's actually like really good rune economy for both specs. Because that's an extra Scourge Strike that cleaves onto everything. That's a extra rune that you could potentially obliterate with everything. So really good for potentially for your rune economy, depending on, again, how often it procs. And if one of these has basically, like, does it cycle through, like you're going to get Mograine, then Whitemane, then Trollbane, or Nazgrim, or are you just going to get RNG'd the entire time? You could get Nazgrim 5 times in a row, which would be great because you get 5% strength a bunch of times. Or do you get like kind of screwed and get Trollbane 5 times in a row? Because I think Trollbane is the weakest of these. So like it kind of depends on how Rider's Champion works, how often it procs, and how does it function. Does it cycle through the Horseman, or do you get a random one every time? Nazgrim's Conquest. Here's our 3rd Horseman one. If an enemy dies while Nazgrim is active, the strength of Apocalyptic Conquest is increased by 3%. Additionally, each rune you spend increases its value by 1%. So again, something that's like inside of Heroism, you could stack this really high. In Mythic Plus, it's going to be really good. It's going to incentivize giant freaking pulls. Because if you get Nazgrim on a giant pull and you are just, like, think of slaying all the mobs in Everbloom, for example, that's a huge, huge strength buff. So very cool. I'm loving what I'm seeing out of this tree so far. Alright, first choice node. Fury of the Horseman. Every 50 runic power you spend extends the duration of the Horseman's aid in combat by 1 second up to 5 seconds. For Frost Decay, this is going to be a little bit tricky because obliteration builds, you don't really care about your runic power when you have the ability to obliterate something for significantly more damage. And Frost Strike is like 20, I think it's 20 RP when you play an obliteration build. So it's also going to be a situation where you're not necessarily going to maximize this, but for Breath of Sindragosa, you're constantly spending RP during the window, 16 RP a second. So it's only going to take, what, 3-4 ticks of that. So 4 seconds, you're going to get this by 1 second. So if you can get a 20-second Breath of Sindragosa, which is really easy to do if you play it well and don't screw up your runic power economy, you're going to max out the duration pretty quickly. For Unholy Gargoyle builds, this will be really easy. Mythic Plus with the Disease build and Epidemic, this is also pretty easy to do. So I think this is a good talent for both specs. A Feast of Souls. While you have 2 or more horsemen aiding you, your runic power spending abilities deal 20% increased damage and have a 10% chance to refund a rune. Cool. I don't know which one of these is better, honestly. I think it'll just be someone smarter than me would have to math it out, but I'm probably leaning towards a Feast of Souls because runic power spending abilities includes Breath of Sindragosa for Frost and Epidemic for Unholy. So you're probably running that. And then also getting more rune refund for, particularly for Frost Breath builds, like, quite good. All right. Horseman's Aid. While at your aid, the Horseman will occasionally cast Anti-Magic Shell on you and themselves at 80% effectiveness. More Absorb. And for Frost Decay, Breath of Sindragosa builds, because you run the talent where you get RP when you absorb damage to your magic shell, this means more RP economy, potentially, for your breath. Which means a longer, more sustained breath. Good. Pact of the Apocalypse. When you take damage, 5% of the damage is redirected to each active horseman. This is actually a really nice defensive ability. I can see Obliteration builds and Frost and Unholy DKs taking this one pretty consistently, depending on how much magic absorb you need. But I think Breath of Sindragosa builds will take Horseman's Aid, because if you get the anti-magic shell, even at 80% effectiveness, if the talent behind them, let me pull it. I think it's called Assimilation. I think it's called Assimilation. Let's look. Death Knight. Anti-magic barrier. So you get increased absorption. Damage absorbed generates runic power. That's just in the base anti-magic shell. So it sounds like this will actually allow you to get runic power spending for using the anti-magic shell, which again for Breath of Sindragosa is very, very valuable because your whole build revolves around your RP economy. So very good stuff. Trollbane's Ice Fury. Here's our last one. When you obliterate or Scourge Strike a target affected by Trollbane's chains of ice, it shatters, dealing Shadow Frost damage to nearby enemies and slows them by 40% for 4 seconds. Okay, so that makes Trollbane stuff a little less gimmicky. You're going to have to pay attention visually unless there's a way for you to like weak aura it, or there's some good representation in game if you're default UI user to know like which target has your chains of ice so that you can immediately switch and Scourge Strike or obliterate it so that you can get that extra damage out. And will it do it off of like a cleaving strikes if that's still around when War Within comes around? Interesting. So again, makes it a little less trolly. Does make you have to pay attention to what's going on a little bit, but it does add some more value to it on top of the 5% damage that you're already getting for them when they get the chains of ice on them. All right. Allsworn Menace. The cooldown of your Horn of Winter and Unholy Blade is reduced by 15 seconds, and Death and Decay is reduced by 10 seconds. So Horn of Winter is an active ability for Frost DK that gives you big RP generation and big rune. It's like, I think it gives you 2 runes. Actually, I got the damn talent build up. Let's look. DK Frost. So Horn of Winter is right here. Gives you 25 runic power and 2 runes straight up. It's on a 45-second cooldown, so now this would take it down to a 30-second cooldown, which again for Breath of Sindragosa builds is really good. And I feel like this tree is really kind of pushing you to play Breath of Sindragosa versus where it's like Death Charger does a good job of kind of balancing the two because it's all built around Reaper's Mark. I think there is some benefit to obliteration with this build, but Rider of the Apocalypse for Frost feels like it's pushing you towards a Breath of Sindragosa build. Death and Decay being reduced by 10 seconds is good because Death and Decay, which is a default talent, I think has like a 20-second cooldown. So getting that cut in half is good. And Unholy Blight being reduced by 15 seconds also is pretty good because I believe it is also a 45-second cooldown. Let's see. Yeah, 45 seconds. So it gives you 2 45-second cooldown abilities drop to 30 seconds and a 10-second duration on your Death and Decay, which depending on how important Death and Decay is in the next expansion with the changes they're expected to make to it, this could be goated or this could be kind of meh. Just depends. All right, and let's look at the last one here. Apocalypse Now. Shoutouts to the reference there. Whoever made that, you're clearly an Apocalypse Now movie enjoyer. Army of the Dead and Frostborn's Fury call all 4 horsemen to aid you for 20 seconds. So obviously Army of the Dead, very long cooldown. That does have some cooldown reduction built into it, but it's 8 minutes. Generally speaking, in really good raid fights or in decent enough-ish Mythic Plus runs, your cooldown on this is closer to like 5 minutes. Potentially 4 with good power infusion. Frost from Tree is a 3-minute cooldown that doesn't have anything to reduce it. So you're only going to get this once every 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, which means it's probably only going to happen once a fight. And then there's also like, there's a lot of intricacies. Like I know with Frostborn's Fury, like it's does more damage based off your strength. So if you run like Icy Citadel talent where you get more strength with your Pillar of Frost that maintains itself at the end of your Death and Decay, you want a Frostborn Fury at the end of a Pillar of Frost window, which means you're going to go about 20 seconds before you'd actually get this up, before you then hit Frostborn Fury, and then you would get all your things. So it makes your end of cooldown window a little bit longer because you're going to gain some pretty strong benefits from Rider's Champion. So potentially really good, especially if you're in a long Breath of Sindragosa window at that point, or you feel like you're able to get a long Breath of Sindragosa window. A lot of the stuff that's happening when the riders are out is going to be pretty useful on top of this. So overall, I think this tree is excellent. It is probably the best one that I've seen. I know Frostfire Mage has gotten a lot of praise as well. I don't know enough about Mage to know exactly why. I just know that people really seem to like it. Riders of the Apocalypse, I'm giving it 10 out of 10. I think this is great. Obviously, you need to tweak and tune some things as needed, but that's going to be good. But in terms of core concepts, I think this is an excellent tree. Maybe a small thing is that you do something to make it a little bit more beneficial to obliteration builds, because things like Horn of Winter aren't really all that valuable, and generating more runic power is not something that Obliterate really cares about because they don't fucking care about their RP anyways. So this build does, for Frosty Gaze at least, does favor a Breath of Sindragosa build, which I mean, I'm not upset about. I like Breath. Overall, I like Breath. I have some particular issues with it, but overall I like playing that style. But so maybe that could happen, but overall I think this tree is a banger. So kudos to whoever designed this one. Excellent name, very thematic name, very thematic idea around it with the new 4 horsemen that you made. If you're a Legion player, you're being rewarded for your time running the Death Knight Order Hall campaign, which you should run it even now as low content because it is an excellent story. So go do it. So you're rewarded for kind of having that. Like, it ties into old lore with Acarus and the Knights of the Ebon Blade and their current standing and stuff. Very, very cool. Love this tree. Definitely my favorite so far. And it's definitely going to be a reason that I will play my Frost DK in War Within. I have like 6 characters now that I just feel like I want to play. I want to play, obviously, Monk. I'm going to play my Druid. I'm going to play my Hunter right now is kind of looking because I play Survival and Pack Hunter was bad. But I have my Monk, my Druid, because I like the flexibility of those 2 specs bring. But DK, Warrior might get busted out because Slayer looks good. Like, there's a lot of talent, these hero talent trees that look appealing, and depending on what class changes happen over the course of the next few months, man, we're gonna have some decisions to make on my end. Yeah, excellent tree, Blizzard. Shout outs and kudos to whoever made Rider of the Apocalypse. This is a fantastic tree in my opinion. Just tweak it and tune it so that it's fair and balanced and gives people an opportunity to actually want to play, particularly Frost DKs. If they want to play Deathbringer, they can. But right now I find it hard pressed to see, unless there's one that's just completely out of balance with the other. I find it hard for DPS DKs not to pick right now. Pick Rider of the Apocalypse just because it sounds cool, it feels cool. Death Charger is great. The Rider Apocalypse Now is great. There's a bunch of really cool stuff going on in this tree. This is an extremely well designed tree, and so shout outs. Until the next video, I hope you all stay safe. Hope you're enjoying yourself. You're having fun. You keep on gaming. Peace and love. I'll see you next time.